Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 2021 Atlantic hurricane season. I'm Jim Williams. I'll be with you tonight for about an hour. I got a lot of stuff to go over tonight. Um, we're going to talk about, before I get to the predictions, I'm going to talk about some critical things to prepare for the upcoming hurricane season. I'm going to talk about what some other people are saying about landfall projections. There's quite a few people out there that are doing this. I know Noah does not like to touch on that subject, and Colorado State, he dabbles a little bit with the county by county and very small percentages. I'm going to go over what Phil Klotzbach has to say at Colorado State. And of course, I'm going to release my top 20 tonight. I've already released it to my mailing list. And by the way, the video has been released. All the data will be released over the next 24 hours. But tonight is the big public announcement of where I think these hurricanes and tropical storms are going to go this year. Now, to give people a little recap on me, I've been doing this since I developed the website in 1997. It was called Jim's Hurricane Web at the time. I acquired the domain, and so next year will be my 25th anniversary of hurricanecity.com, which is based on landfalling hurricanes. I don't really care about fish storms. I don't care about long-range models that go out 2 weeks because they could show a fish storm and they could show a landfall. I focus on the cities that are being impacted by hurricanes, not just in the United States, but in the Caribbean as well, because we have a lot of neighbors down there to the south, and they're the first line of defense. Usually when hurricanes come toward the U.S., they pass through the Caribbean on the way to the United States. Sometimes they come in from the east, maybe south of Bermuda, maybe over Bermuda, but I talk about all cities in the Atlantic Basin. That's what I'm about, not the East Pacific. I don't talk about the West Pacific. I'm purely an Atlantic Basin guy. I developed the site for that particular reason, and so that's what I do. And by the way, you can comment tonight. I am on Facebook, I'm on Periscope, and on YouTube tonight. This is the first time I've gone to all three. Plus, I'm on the Hurricane City Facebook page, which really nobody goes to. I use my Facebook personal page as my place where people can correspond with me. And I use the Hurricane City Facebook basically for live streaming purposes, like you're seeing tonight. So already we have a comment. This is from David A. Thanks, Jim. Love your work. 25th anniversary. Actually, that's next year, David, not this year, but getting close. I mean, one more year, it'll be 25 years of doing this. So I also want to mention that the products at Hurricane City, when I built the site, it was in HTML, and I still do it in HTML. Every single thing you see at Hurricane City, I've developed on my own, with the exception of the recon program and the KML files that Chris puts together in Tampa. And he does all the live, the best performing models, the recon, all that stuff. Chris does from Tampa, and I really appreciate it. And he helps me a little bit with the HTML if I run into a jam that I can't figure out. So now here's another comment from somebody already. We're out of the gates here. Josh, I've been watching Jim since Hurricane Irene threatened the northeast of me in Rhode Island in 2011. Always provides valuable information. I appreciate that. So again, if you want to comment below the live feed at Facebook and on Periscope, I'm interested to hear if people are on Facebook. When you do comment tonight, please let me know what platform you're on. I want to hear who's listening and watching from where. I'm always curious about that. But anyway, what's new with Hurricane City this year? I've got, let's see, I've been working hard in the off season on, when you go to the database, there's 140, well, now it's 139 cities in the database. And at the top of each city database is a link that says current weather. So when you click on that, it'll give you a full-blown GIS map and zoomed right in on that city. So when a hurricane hits this year, you can go to that database, click on whatever city's being hit, and you can, the zoomed in GIS map is not only going to have the live streaming motion video from that area, but it's also going to have the weather observations, live weather observations, and live. And when I mean live cameras, I'm not talking about still images that update every few minutes, or something that updates like a motion, like every few seconds you get a new image. These are live streaming motion video, like you see on what's that platform? It's slipping my mind. The company that makes the live videos from Key West and New York City. Anyway, I'll remember in a minute. But anyway, those type of live shots are all on those GIS maps. Also, from a coverage perspective this year, I covered just about every hurricane that hits land. Sometimes if they're category ones like Hannah in Texas, I did not cover that one. Okay, here's somebody from, it's David again from Australia. Let me see. He said, okay, very good. He's on YouTube. Great. This is the first time I've ever streamed to YouTube, believe it or not. So I'm interested in seeing how that comes out. But anyway, so now what was I going to talk about? Let's see, I've added the live videos, I've added the weather observations. Oh, the live streaming. Okay, so we cover myself and Bill Phillips, we get together, my streaming partner, and we try to produce a live hurricane coverage show showing live streaming cams, weather observations, news from the affected areas. And what we did last year, we were in a lot of those storms. I say I was in the storms. I was in Delta, Sally, and Ada last year. The previous year, let's see, 1990 was kind of a quiet year for the United States. We had Dorian. I did not go after Dorian because it did hit the southeastern United States, up in the mid-Atlantic states. In 2018, I was in Hurricane Michael covering that. We had our stream going on Facebook. We had a lot of people watching on Facebook and Periscope. So this year, it's what we're going to do. I'm not going to harp on this too much because a lot of this is in the works. But my broadcast partner, Bill Phillips, he's going to try to set up his remote cam in the mid-Atlantic states, because he lives up in Virginia Beach, and he can get down to North Carolina, he can get down maybe to South Carolina, or especially the Outer Banks, set up the camera and get out of Dodge and get back to, and we can cover it together with our own live camera. We may be together this year in the intercepts. That's still in the works. But when they're in the Caribbean, naturally we can't go there, so we'll cover those live if they're major or very powerful hurricanes. And that's the plans for this year. So anyway, tonight, it's very important to understand when I release my predictions, it doesn't mean that if you're off the list, if one of your cities is not in my top 20, it doesn't mean you can go, I'm off the hook, nothing to worry about. No, there are going to be years, in fact, it happens every year, where there's I have a fly buzzing around my head, it drives me crazy. We have a hurricane or hurricanes or a major that'll hit an area that I don't predict. Last year is a good example of that. Cameron, Louisiana. I did not have that in my top 20 last year. They got slammed by Laura and Delta to a certain extent. And they got devastated last year. They had a lot of activity. I did have Grand Isle, Louisiana at number 8, and they were hit by major Hurricane Zeta. They upgraded it to a major. So we have that as well. And this is from Stephen. Thank you, Stephen, a good supporter of Hurricane City. Appreciate that. The coverage of Michael was awesome. I was right in the heart of that thing. I know a lot of people are like, when it comes to storm chasing, I mean, I could do a whole show on this. There are people out there that are like, I'm the only one. I'm the only one doing this. I'm the only one, or they're trying to turn it into a science project. Look, I've been doing this since really my first intercept live was Hurricane George in 1998 in Pascagoula, Mississippi. myself and Jeff Gammons, we were up there, and we were live intermittently and live audio only because there was no video back in those days. And then, you know, as the early 2000s came around, I was covering a lot of the hurricanes with other chasers. So I'm all inclusive. I like to include everybody. I've you know, we've had Jeff Petrowski on the shows, Mark Sudduth from HurricaneTrack.com, Mike Dice, you know, you name it. All these guys that are out there, they've at one time or another been on my show covering hurricanes as they're making landfall. Well, since all the copyright stuff started, I've had to kind of rethink this a little bit and decide I got to get into these storms, because not only can I show what's happening from I have a nice truck. I'll show it to you in a minute. It's all set up for this hurricane season, which, by the way, the donations are critical. I mean, the cameras, the remote cameras, all that is not possible without the help of the people that donate to Hurricane City. We love you for it. It really helps a lot. But getting in the storm, and when I get in the storm, I don't want to run away from it. I want to be right where it's happening, right in the teeth of that thing. I want to jump right in the mouth of that shark. And that's what you're going to get. You're going to get blockbuster, you know, the stuff that a lot of people, you don't see, because a lot of these storm chasers, they're hiding in hotels, they're hunkering down somewhere. I'm right out in the middle of it. And in Michael, we were able to give people a firsthand, you know, watching buildings coming apart, poles falling down. I mean, there were fish flopping in the street in Delta last year. You know, showing the surge coming in. Our cameras were right there watching surge pouring into Louisiana. It was amazing. So we're going to continue to do that this year. Fred watching from Long Island. And on YouTube. Okay, so we got several people watching on YouTube. That's good to know. I guess they're getting notifications. By the way, I'm wondering if people are getting notifications rather, of when I'm live, because I don't even know. I don't get them on my phone, and I follow myself to see if it comes live, and I don't really get any notifications. In fact, my phone's out in the living room. Anyway. So don't text me if you well, let me go get the phone in case there's a problem. By the way, you guys all catching these hurricane specials on your local TV station? I'm wondering if anybody down in the Caribbean has those specials, because I know in the United States, a lot of the markets are you know, they have an hour-long special. They'll have what you need to prepare for a hurricane. They'll talk about how global warming is impacting hurricanes. And by the way, I'm going to touch on that tonight, because I have strong feelings on this. I do believe that global warming is a problem, and we have to it's changing, definitely changing things. But is it really impacting hurricane season? And that's something that you know. I got some stats on that. Okay, let's see. The hurricane season last year hit lower down in the Caribbean, such as San Andres. Just an observation. Yes, my notification. Yeah, and that's a good point, because I really didn't have. Let me see. I did not have Nicaragua at high risk this last year, and they were pounded by both Zeta and Iota as nearly Category 5 hurricanes. And we did cover both of those, by the way. No specials have aired up in New York. Really? Up in Long Island, no specials have aired. That's interesting. Just about every channel down here, NBC, ABC, CBS, all have hurricane specials going tonight. In fact, I was just watching one on NBC 6, and they were talking about climate and how it's impacting hurricane seasons, and the preparations that are needed to your house. So I'm going to touch a little bit on preparations. Those of you that know me, I'm not big into that aspect of it. I just like to cover hurricanes, kind of like a play-by-play. I you know, cover the hurricanes. I have the database. I do the rankings of cities. I do the predictions, and that's about it. I do a little bit of preparedness stuff, but it's, you know, I'd rather use this show tonight to primarily talk about where I think hurricanes are going to go, because it really doesn't get enough attention when you think about it. Every time they talk about where the hurricane season coming up, it's all about how many named storms, how many majors, how many hurricanes are there going to be versus tropical storms. What is the ACE going to be? Most people, I mean, the accumulated cyclone energy, it just shows the overall equation of what the strength of a storm is, the motion, the strength, the size of it, and all that. But I mean, the average Joe in their house in, say, Charleston, for example, how are they supposed to make out what the ACE is going to mean? They don't. It means nothing to them. All people want to know is, where are these hurricanes going? Are they coming to my neck of the woods? I'm not always right, but at least there are other people out there talking about where they could potentially go. And what's interesting this year is there are quite a few guys that are kind of on the same track. And that makes me nervous, because normally there's a difference between certain forecasters saying one area and other forecasters think another area is at risk. And then some people are like up in the Northeast, and some people are, they draw these big bubbles, like where they think something is going to hit. I narrow it down to cities, because the more data, the more you narrow down to street level, the more data that becomes available. And I'm able to number crunch a lot better that way. And you'll see my methodology coming up here in a little bit. So let's go ahead and get to the images this evening. And all right, let's go ahead and get to our first image this evening. And I'm hoping you're seeing that. It won't be full screen, but it'll be kind of, I'll be a little thumbnail in the right-hand corner, and you'll be able to see mainly what I'm talking about. So this was the graphic showing last year's hurricane season compared to all of the other really active seasons we've seen. 1933 was a blockbuster season. 1960 was very busy. 1979, 1985, 2005, 2020. So look at how many impacted the cities in my database. I have 139 cities. Last year was nearly 84% of all of the cities in the database were impacted by 40-mile-per-hour winds or greater. So, I mean, it's amazing. 117 out of the 139 cities were impacted last hurricane season. That is incredible. The next runner-up is 1960. And that's not even the second busiest. I mean, 2005 was the second busiest, and then 1933 was the third busiest. And it blew away 2005 as far as impacts to land. So are we going to see that this year? I'm not quite thinking we're going to get 90% or 85% of all the cities impacted, but I think we could be somewhere around the 60% range, perhaps, of all the cities in the database. I don't think it's going to be as much of a barn burner landfall season as last year. So here was last year's tracking map from the National Hurricane Center, and notice the conglomeration of systems in the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, look at this down here. It's just amazing how much activity was in the Gulf of Mexico last year. How compared to 2005, and out in 2005 there were quite a few more in this area than there was last year. So that would indicate stronger ridging, forcing more storms that were weaker last year, by the way. Look, I mean, a lot of them were weak out in here. And then they developed in the Western Caribbean, and then the rest is history. But, okay, let me see. Yeah. So this year, I'm thinking we're going to have a little bit more activity, maybe heading up the East Coast, maybe more recurvatures out in the East Atlantic. But I also think we're going to see a little bit of more of a positive North Atlantic oscillation, and that helps build a ridge out in the Atlantic here and steer storms further to the west. So I'm not thinking, see, the reason last year, it wasn't that there was a strong NAO last year, because last year there was kind of a mix in that. It was kind of positive, negative, positive, negative. There was a lot of fluctuation in the North Atlantic Oscillation last year. But I think the reason a lot of systems ended up in the Gulf of Mexico is because they remained weak as they were coming across the Atlantic. And when usually weaker systems tend to travel further south. And then they developed in the Western Caribbean and then really ramped up in the Gulf of Mexico. This year, I think we might see stronger systems a little further east, which would lend to maybe a turn a little sooner than the Gulf of Mexico. I don't think it's going to be as much of a barn burner year in the Gulf of Mexico this year as there was last year. And I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that because you live in the Gulf, you should rest your, because when you're in an active season, anybody in the Northern Gulf is at extreme high risk. The Northern Gulf cities always get slammed in really busy hurricane seasons. And by the way, I'm predicting 20 to 24 named storms this year, which is more than most of the experts are predicting. So here was last year's storms again. Let me zoom this in a little bit. Again, just a barn burner system for the Gulf season for the Gulf of Mexico. Started out with Hannah down here, and I did predict South Texas was going to be impacted last year. So they were hit by Hannah. I did have Grand Isle, Louisiana at number 8. They were hit by major hurricane Zeta. I did not have the Western Gulf last year, which is proof that just because I don't have you in my top 20, especially in my top 5, doesn't mean you can go, I'm off the hook, because there's going to be areas hit that I don't pick. I know I'm sounding like a broken record right now, but I have to keep emphasizing that because I don't want people. And I think the reason a lot of the professionals out there don't repeat these predictions and don't share them and don't talk about them is because they don't like to send a message that it's okay for, he's all focused on these particular cities, and that gives the impression that the other cities are off the hook. And that's not what I'm saying here. All I'm saying is what I do pick is just at a heightened state of alert. That doesn't mean that the other areas are off the hook. And I think a lot of the forecasters don't want to touch it. And a lot of them don't like to make these kind of forecasts for that very reason. But I think there's enough guys out there doing this, and we're all kind of agreeing to a certain extent on what's going to happen. And that tells me that a lot of the methodology or maybe the reasons behind why people are picking certain areas versus other is because we're all on the same wavelength, or maybe we're thinking a lot alike. And that's why a lot of these predictions are coming true. A lot of these guys have good track records because there is a methodology to it. I don't always agree with everybody's methodology, but you need to pay attention to these landfall predictions. That's all I'm saying, even though the pros don't like to talk about it. And of course, we did have Isaias go up the East Coast, so it wasn't exactly quiet. And we did have a few tropical storms, so all of my top 5 were impacted last year. So a little bit on the home front here. I just wanted to this is my house under construction. This was after the season ended. I had a friend of mine, contractor, come over and stucco the gable ends of the house here and the fascia boards on the south-facing side of the house. This is facing south. And I'm in Delray Beach, so this is facing towards Miami, for example, for those that international people watching that may not be familiar with South Florida. This is facing due south. This is the front of the house. And I was really concerned with the areas right here, the gable end, especially this right here. I was really concerned with that because there was some rotted wood up in there and just didn't feel good about it. So it's all been reinforced now, and heavy duty reinforcement here and on this as well. So I'm feeling much better about any, especially major hurricanes coming in from the southeast, which would cause the winds to basically come right at it like this, straight at it, and would blow those ends in. If the winds got probably over 130 miles an hour, it'd be a disaster. So I went ahead and reinforced that. And I would encourage anybody that has a wood frame second floor on their house to, of course, this is CBS at the bottom. I'll show you some more pictures here in a minute. But if you have wood frame on your second floor, it's vulnerable to caving in under really high stress wind events. So I felt I needed to get that done. And here is the house finished, of course. Notice we do have the accordion shutters on all of our windows, and I would suggest, and I'm telling you, that's the best investment I ever made on this house. It cost about $7,000, $8,000, but as opposed to maybe impact resistant windows, they can still break. The wind can still get in. And they claim, it withstands winds up to 180 miles an hour for the impact resistant windows. But what if you have a 2x4 driving in there at, 200 miles an hour? I don't know if it's necessarily going to, or maybe multiple impacts. Say you have several things hit your windows at 200 miles per hour. It will eventually that window will be sacrificed at some point. And at the very least, it's going to break, even if it's impact resistant. The window is going to break, so you're going to have to get it replaced. I prefer to have the accordion shutters because it's just a simple close and lock. It's that simple. I can wait till I don't even need to worry about the hurricane until the core gets there. Like when the winds get around 100 miles an hour, I can just go around. Of course, the top windows, the second floor windows, I close those as the hurricane is approaching. And I don't have to scramble like a crazy person running to Home Depot trying to find bolts and wood to fit my windows and all that. Everything is ready to go, just close and lock. And they're really heavy duty shutters too. They can really, I mean, you could beat on them with a baseball bat. You're not going to put a dent on those. They're heavy duty, and and then of course when the hurricane approaches, like the bottom floor windows can be closed at the last minute. So it really gives you a peace of mind to have accordion shutters. I recommend it for everybody with a house in a high impact area for hurricanes. So here's the big talk lately with the insurance industry. A lot of insurance companies are canceling policies, especially in Florida. There's a rash of cancelizations of hurricane insurance because a lot of these insurance companies don't want to take on the risk. And our rates kept going up and up and up. So our insurance company, in order to renew it, they required us to get a wind mitigation report on our house. So what they do is they go around taking pictures of the windows. They want to make sure they're nice and strong, that you have the accordion shutters or proper protection. This shot here cracks me up because you can see my dog Bark Ass. I mean, that's his nickname. The neighbors all know Bark Ass. My friends all know Bark Ass. But he's a loving dog, and he barks at everything. That's why we call him Bark Ass. But I love Bark Ass. I mean, we had him for like 6 years. He's been in several hurricanes, and we let him run around out in the backyard. But the guy taking the pictures jumped over the fence, didn't even give me a chance to get him out of the backyard. So naturally, the tail was in the up position. The ears were, he was ready to attack when that picture was taken. Kind of hilarious, but nothing ever ended up happening. The guy just strangely just jumped over the fence or found a way in the backyard somehow and started taking pictures before I knew he was back there. But anyway, they took more pictures here of the shutters, and we have a Cat 5 rated garage door as well. Notice the reinforced beams running across here. All these beams running across are about 5-6 inches thick, and they reinforce the garage door so it doesn't buckle. And of course, when I did that, my garage door opener became obsolete because it's supposed to be able to handle that kind of weight, and it couldn't pull up the garage door. So I eventually going to have to get a new garage door opener. So I just open it manually. But this is, really needed in most houses because your garage door is one of the first things to blow in. If the wind hits it directly and it's a major hurricane, it's probably going to blow your garage door in. So just something for people to think about when they have a problem with their insurance company. At least offer, if they're ready to cancel you, at least you can come out and say, well, can you at least do a wind mitigation report on it? You have to pay for that as the homeowner, but you supply it to the insurance company, and it may actually lower your rates, believe it or not. It may lower your rates and give the insurance company assurance that your house is ready. There's another message from somebody here. Josh, I'm on YouTube also. I always get your notifications. Haven't seen any hurricane specials here in Rhode Island, but I barely watch local media. Okay. Rhode Island, uh, Providence is one of the cities in my database. The 1933 hurricane, 1938 rather, comes to mind up there. That steamroller became a Category 4 hurricane, racing up the East Coast. And, at the time they didn't know it was that strong. And at the time, actually at that time, that hurricane 1938 was supposed to hit Florida. Everybody in Florida thought that was coming. Well, it made the turn and headed right up the coast. And, luckily in today's world, we have models to pick up on that, and a lot of the notifications through social media and television. They didn't have that back in 1938, and it was disastrous. But glad you're watching from Rhode Island tonight. So our next image here, let's see. Okay, so this is something a lot of people may not know. Your homeowner's insurance policy does not include coverage for damage resulting from flood, even if hurricane winds and rain cause the flood to occur. This is important because you need a separate policy for flood insurance everywhere. And there's a federal flood insurance plan that you can add on to your wind policy. So we do not have it here at my location because I'm so elevated. We're like 15 feet above sea level and we're a mile inland. So the elevation east of us here is elevated somewhat. So the surge would have to come like over a hill and down and then over the railroad tracks, come all the way west to where I am, about a mile inland. So we are not in a flood zone. We're would be on the edge of, if a Category 5 came in here, there would be flooding my house would be like the beach, basically. All the surge would be east of where I'm located. And I know we've had several significant hurricanes come in here and the water never came up anywhere near Federal Highway. Now, if you're down in Broward and Dade County, yes, the surge will come and inundate Federal Highway. You have to get out of those areas. But if you live anywhere in South Florida or anywhere on the East Coast or in the Gulf of Mexico, you better check your insurance policy because it does not cover flooding, even if it's from rain. Now, I don't know about people in condominiums. I don't know how that applies. So, not sure if you get rain water inside of a condo, if your window breaks, if you have 5 inches of rain in your condo and it floods your drywall or whatever. I'm not sure if your policy covers that. So you might want to check your policy if you live in a high rise, just to make sure that if rain gets inside your condo, you're covered. Something to think about. Okay, so here's the $1 million question. With global warming, and I still like to call it global warming rather than climate change, even though there's many aspects to climate change. And the reason a lot of people call it climate change is because you can have droughts. There's increased droughts. There's increased floods when hurricanes hit because there's a lot more moisture in the areas of where the tropics are. Hurricanes are getting stronger with the warmer waters, and there's going to be more rain dumped on land. Let me see. Oh, yeah, and it also takes, by the way, on the flood insurance thing, thanks for Bill for reminding me that it takes 30 days to implement a flood insurance policy. So don't wait till a hurricane is coming and go, oh, by the way, I should probably get flood insurance. You got to do that now before hurricanes come. But anyway, as far as global warming, so we know that there's more hurricanes. That I'm convinced, well, there's more named storms, right? We know there's more extreme weather events. So that's why they call it climate change. But I still like to refer to it as global warming because the earth is warming, the oceans are warming, and we're seeing more violent weather as a result of that. So how does it affect landfalling systems? This is where it diverges a little bit. Of the 139 locations in my database, since 1998, 48% are seeing increased impacts, meaning more landfalling named storms. 32% are seeing just about average, and 20% are seeing less impacts. So it's about 50-50 if you add it all up. Half are seeing more impacts and half are about normal or below normal. So I'm not ready to send the alarm bells on, oh my God, we're getting more landfalls. And anybody that's telling you that is kind of giving you misinformation to a certain extent. Should you be more concerned about landfalls? Yes, but so far there has not been more landfalls due to global warming since 1990, which is about the time period where we really started seeing increases in the number of named storms in the Atlantic Basin. By the way, Josh mentioned in Newport, they don't always talk about Donna, Diane, and Bob in 1991. That is true. There was Bob. Bob was a big one. That was significant hurricane. I think it got major. It was like 105, 110 up in the Northeast. And Donna and Diane were beasts as well. I mean, yeah, they have had some significant impacts up there, not just the 1938. I don't mean to leave out those other storms up there. Always feel free to comment. It will show up in my feed over here on the program I'm using. By the way, we're using Restream tonight, which is a web-based streaming platform. During the season and on some of the intercepts this year, I may be using a different program called Switcher. I'm going to be experimenting with that coming up in the next few weeks for the upcoming hurricane season intercepts. But for landfalling in-house broadcast, I'll probably be using Restream because of the functionality of it, not having to use smart devices to complete your stream. All right, so what are other people saying about landfalls this year? So here is Joe Bastardi, Weather Bell. Well, it's actually Weather Bell, not just Joe Bastardi, but here is what they're proclaiming could happen this hurricane season. The red areas, 6 times the normal activity, yellow, 3 times the normal activity, and green would be below normal activity, which would include some of the areas that were pounded last year. Iota and Eta impacted Central America badly last year. They're predicting that's not going to be the case this year. Below normal chances down there. Average for, well, actually 3 times the normal for the Lesser Antilles over here, and the Yucatan Peninsula, Western Cuba, and the southern half of the Florida Peninsula. The very northeastern Gulf of Mexico, which is rather interesting because I'm going to show you my predictions coming up here, but they're not quite touching on some of the areas that I have it impacted this high impact potential this year. They're also predicting Georgia and southern South Carolina, which also I have at high impact this year. I also have high impact up in the red zone that he has for the mid-Atlantic. And he has 3 times the normal from there up to include the Northeast and the Canadian Maritimes. They don't mention Bermuda up here. I don't know why. Or Mexico. I guess if he doesn't have anything highlighted, I guess it's just normal activity. So they're predicting 3 to 6 hurricanes. Major impact landfalls 2 to 4, which would be alarming if that happened, and hurricane conditions 4 to 8 U.S. impacts. So according to Weather Bell, this could be a blockbuster season just like last year. I mean, that would indicate anywhere between 4 and 8 landfalls of hurricanes this year. So I don't know, but the only thing different from my predictions this year is the red highlighted area he has here in the western Gulf of Mexico. I'm not real high on that area this year. It's not to say that nothing's going to come up in there, but that red area over here, I don't really have it at high risk this hurricane season. And I'm not here to criticize these forecasts or critique their methodology or talk about whether they were successful in the past or not. I'm just here to show you what they're saying for this particular hurricane season. So that's Weather Bell. All right, so let's get to the next one. And this is Dale Link. Now, he doesn't really get a lot of attention on social media. He's been doing this for quite a few years, but not as long as I've been doing them. I've been doing this since 2003. But what he does is he picks zones, right? So he does this not only for the Atlantic, but the Western Pacific and the Indian Ocean and all over the globe. I'm strictly an Atlantic hurricane guy, but he's got the Western Gulf Zone 1, Zone 2, Southeastern Louisiana over to Alabama. Neither of these zones I have at high risk. What is interesting is he has Zone 3 at high risk, which does include my high risk area. And zone number 4 also includes my high risk area, which is the southern half of Florida. And zone 5, Puerto Rico out in the Virgin Islands. I'll comment on that in a minute. And also zone 4B. I guess he has two different zone 4s, but yeah, the zone 4. I don't know why he just doesn't pick like zone 6 or something, but he's got 4B up here, eastern North Carolina, which I also have at high risk this hurricane season. So he's got a few areas. 3 of his 6 are not in my high impact zone this year. And by the way, the reason I don't like big circles like this is because if, like, for example, if a hurricane or a tropical storm is passing like over here, right on the edge of that bubble, he's going to give himself a hit score for that, even though the tropical storm force winds might not extend down in here. So I have a problem with this methodology of using the big circles because it can kind of not impact land and still give you an impact score. For example, let's talk about Texas over here. Like if a hurricane or tropical storm passes out in here, he's still going to give himself a hit on that. And I'm not really comfortable with that. But you know, everybody has their own methods, and it is what it is. So Dale Link, again, 3 out of the 6 I have at high risk. He has at high risk, or at least he's got the zones of thinking that. And by the way, these are hurricane landfalls, not named storms. Mine include named storms and hurricanes. All right, now here's Rob at Crown Weather, and he's got the same area. Maybe he extended it over. And again, this is, you know, he's giving himself a lot of room here. From, say, Morgan City to the west, all of Florida, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, all of the Bahamas, coastal Cuba, although he doesn't really have it as a hit on Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the northeastern Virgin Islands and Leeward Islands up in here. That's kind of a big, wide swath, you know, and again, I'm not sure how he grades himself. If we have something here, does it count for the Bahamas? I don't know. What if we have something right up in here? I mean, is he going to say, well, it passed within that pink circle, so it counts? So, and I don't have Bermuda either, but you know, it just makes me wonder if that does include that. I'd have to ask him that. He's got lower than average, which is similar to what Weatherbell was saying. Lower than average impact down here in the Southwest Caribbean. However, I'm very concerned about Jamaica this year and the Caymans. He has lower than average risk down here. So I diverge on that. And he also has the Canadian Maritimes at high risk this year. I'm kind of neutral on that. But Rob does a great job because he sends out a mailing list. If you subscribe to his service, he gives you a sometimes like almost every day, every other day, maybe once a week if things are slow. But he gives updates constantly through email, kind of giving his reasoning on models and everything. And it's very inexpensive. So I suggest check out Rob's subscription service over there at Crown Weather. I've subscribed to it, and it's a great source of information. And he gets really into the details when there's a landfalling threat. So I appreciate that. But we diverge a little bit on the methodology. Again, I like to get down to city level so that there's no gray area with my predictions. If I say your area is going to get hit, you're going to get hit. There's not going to, or you're going to get at least 40-mile-an-hour winds. There's no, well, it passed 60 miles away, so it didn't count. If the wind field, I'm expecting the tropical storm force wind field to impact my cities. Another thing Rob does, let me zoom in on this a little bit, is he's giving the risk threat based on color coding. I really like this idea. So obviously, the darker the reds, the more he's thinking hurricane impacts versus maybe just like yellow, thinking something weaker. So he has southeastern North Carolina, so do I. He's kind of thinking the same way I am for South Florida, kind of a little bit. I'm not really high on the major devastating hurricane impact for South Florida, but I'm thinking we're going to get something this year. And he's a little bit kind of flirting with hurricane, Cat 2, Cat 3 for the Big Bend area potentially. And I'm also thinking that that's a possibility, but it could also be a tropical storm as well. Now, what's surprising with this map is he does have Western Cuba red here. So he's thinking there's a potential high impact, high intensity impact probability, but yet he doesn't have the Western Caribbean at high risk. So I'm a little confused at that. He did have Puerto Rico over here, and he's kind of showing it in a, it's hard to see. Yeah, there he does have Puerto Rico under the orange a little bit, so potential for hurricane there as well, and the northeastern Caribbean Sea, the Greater Antilles. I mean, not the Greater Antilles, Lesser Antilles, the Leeward Islands, over towards the Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico, potential for hurricane, and of course, southeastern North Carolina. And some of the same areas that were impacted last year from the plethora of storms that came into the Yucatan Peninsula. I like this concept, I really do. Next. So this is from Ben Knoll, and this kind of stood out to me. Now, this is precipitation percentiles to identify potential hurricane hotspots, right? So naturally, the darker the colors, the more potential impacts going into the hurricane season. Mark from hurricanetrack.com mentioned this on Twitter, and I decided to take a screenshot of it because he's got a lot of the same areas that I have at high impact this year. The Florida Peninsula, all the way up to the Big Bend, including the Carolinas. So, and he also has the Western Caribbean shaded here a little bit. Not particularly Puerto Rico, maybe a little bit, 50%. Southeastern Bahamas. I do not have the southern Gulf of Mexico highlighted. He does here, and the southern Caribbean Sea for potential high impacts. And of course, up in the Canadian Maritimes, I'm kind of neutral on that this year. And he doesn't have Bermuda, strangely. I don't have Bermuda either this year. And Bermuda is such a high hit area that it almost gets hit almost every single year, just like the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And for me not to have Bermuda in my top 20 is really alarming. But wait a minute, do I? I'll show the graphic. It's just, I don't even know my own top 20. That's pretty pathetic. But I don't think I have Bermuda in my top 20. But that map is interesting because this is one of these guys that's highly educated, and it's one of those things on Twitter. If you're highly educated, everybody wants to know what you have to say. If you're not highly educated like me, I'm a hobbyist, so I don't have a PhD, and people aren't going to take what I say seriously, even though my track record is outstanding. But he does mirror kind of what I'm thinking for this year, and I found that rather interesting. Okay, so here's Phil Klotzbach. I'll get to my predictions in just a minute. So Phil Klotzbach doesn't really he gives very small percentages for counties all through the United States that he thinks are going to be impacted in the upcoming hurricane season. But what he's also done is this, which is not just by him, but Michael Bell and Jordan Jones. So what I did was I highlighted all the states that he's showing the potential for impact versus climatology. So over here on the right, this is the climatological averages of potential impacts from named storms. And over here on the left is his thinking of the probabilities of getting a named storm. So out of all of these states, he has the biggest spread are for Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, and Virginia, which I find interesting because all of the other areas that he has are only slightly above the climatological normal or right at it. So I decided to highlight these 6 states. Phil Klotzbach thinking there's above average, above average more than normal on his way of thinking, these states being impacted. Out of these states, only North Carolina do we have an agreement on, and South Carolina to a certain extent. Florida, he does not have any more than, he only has it at 10% above the climatological average, compared to Alabama at 17%. And I just don't have Alabama at high risk this year. And Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, he's got those all at higher risk than his climatological averages, way above, 17% above, and the others at lower chances. So with that said, though, Phil Klotzbach has also said that the impacts from climate change, global warming, is a concern, which diverges from Dr. William Gray. Now, I've attended a lot of these hurricane conferences, and I've had conversations with these guys about climate change. And I have an interesting soundbite I want to share with you here. And it is from 2007. I sat down with Phil Klotzbach, did an interview, and this is a clip from that interview. And listen to this carefully, because it implies that if we don't have a change in the warming of the Atlantic basin and the amount of increased activity, then we need to reevaluate what's going on in the Atlantic basin. So here's what Phil said back in 2007. Listen carefully.
Well, Dr. Gray, I know you don't speak for Dr. Gray with everything he says, but he does say 5 to 10 years he expects things to cool again. Do you believe that? I mean, do you really buy it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, time will tell. Certainly, if we don't see cooling in the next 5 to 10 years, then probably our theory isn't valid. I think that's a pretty fair statement, is that we should start to see a leveling off of the warming and a slight cooling over the next 5 to 10 years. If that doesn't occur, then there may be something else going on.
Wow. I mean, that's 2007. That's 13 years ago. 14 years. I mean, it's going on 14 years. So we were already active way before that interview took place. And Dr. William Gray believes in the multi-decadal oscillation, which indicates that every 30 years or so, we go back into this cool period where we see less activity in the Atlantic basin. Well, Phil Klotzbach completely contradicted that in that statement. And if we continue being busy as we've been, with maybe a couple of little dips, a couple of years have been kind of slow over the last 30 years, but we're breaking records. We're having these tremendous amount of, in fact, after 2005, I've said to a lot of people, I go, this might be the beginning of something that's really crazy. And will it continue to increase? And last year we saw 30 named storm. Man, that's ridiculous. Now, you could argue, well, they're naming a lot of these subtropical systems. They're naming a lot of systems in the North Atlantic. Is that because of satellite and data availability, or is that because more storms are developing further north, which is another interesting concept, because in my database, there has been an increase in the amount of landfalling systems north of 30 degrees. So that factors in, but something is going on. I mean, this isn't just, it has been going on for too long. So I don't know if this multi-decadal oscillation talk is going to hold any water very much further into the future. We've already passed that. We need to re-examine based on Phil Klotzbach. So, and I know Dr. Gray's turning over in his grave right now. I mean, if he got wind that some of his guys are kind of backtracking a little bit and thinking maybe this multi-decadal oscillation thing has got to, maybe we got to temper that down a little bit and say things are maybe because of climate change, global warming, things are going to continue to increase here. And maybe we're not going to see as many El Ninos. The Enzos are been cooler to neutral. Things, I don't know, something just isn't right. And I think we're beginning to see it, and I think we're going to see more landfalls in the future because of this as well. A lot of things are uncertain. By the way, you can comment anytime you want at Facebook and on YouTube and on Periscope. I'm looking to see if anybody's on Periscope tonight. If you're watching, comment and let me know. Maybe there are people commenting. It just doesn't show up on here. I don't know how this program works. But anyway, let me get back to the images. Again, I'm Jim Williams. We're live here. It is almost 9 o'clock. I've been with you since about 8 p.m. and I'm running out of time. So let's get to the images. Stormfront freaks are commenting about the show tonight. Appreciate that. I've been on, by the way, if anybody's wondering about my credibility or anything like that don't know me, my articles, my database, my rankings, my predictions, etc., have been mentioned in Popular Mechanics magazine, Natural History magazine. My data has been used on CNN, MSNBC. I've been on the Stormfront Freak show, the James Spann show to discuss these things. Numerous local television stations. Let's see. There's been educational institutions that have used my data in their textbooks. So you can go, there's a mentions page at the top of Hurricane City in the drop-down menus. It's mentions, you can see all the places that Hurricane City has been mentioned and used. So I do appreciate that. And now somebody, there we go. We got a guy in, how do I replay this? Marlon, this is in Periscope. Marlon, it'll be archived at Periscope, but it'll also be on my Facebook. Actually, what I'll do is when this show is over tonight, I will archive it. It will be on my YouTube page at hurricanecity.com, spelled out one word, Hurricane City, DOTCOM. That's how you can find me on YouTube. On Twitter, it's at Hurricane City, of course, and I should be using my captions. Let me do this. Again, you can follow me at Hurricane City, and that's on Twitter. And also, I will edit this down a little bit, and it'll be available on my YouTube page. And at Facebook, you can type in Jim Williams or Hurricane City, all one word, and Hurricane City tracking, by the way, on Facebook to find all my information. And of course, hurricanecity.com. It'll be archived on the archive page, along with all of the shows, all the hurricane coverage over the years, and all of my predictions and everything else can be found in those drop-down menus at Hurricane City. So I do appreciate that. All right, so let me get rid of that. And let's get back to the images here. So where is it? Okay. So we talked about Klotzbach a little bit here, and let's get to, why isn't that changing? Because I enhanced the size of that. Okay. All right, so here were my predictions from last year, and everything that's highlighted in yellow was impacted by 40-mile-per-hour winds or greater. Cancun, Mexico was impacted by 4 named storms, 2 of them hurricanes. Let's see, no, 3 of them were, no, 2 of them hurricanes, 2 of them tropical storms. That was my number 1. So I don't think anybody in Cancun is complaining that I had them picked at number 1 last year. The Cayman Islands were in my top 5 as well. They were impacted by Laura, Tropical Storm Laura, and Tropical Storm Eta. Manzanillo, Cuba, Tropical Storm Laura. St. Pierre, Newfoundland, which is southwest of St. John's, Newfoundland. They were impacted by extratropical storm Teddy. So what I do after the season is I take all these landfalls and I measure how far away the center came from each one of my cities. And the average this year was 55 miles, which isn't bad. Now, it would be much closer to each one of my cities if it wasn't for St. Pierre, Newfoundland, because extratropical storm Teddy passed 160 miles away and still gave them sustained tropical storm force winds. So I had to include it, and that is in the math. And 160 divided, by a bunch of others where they're only 50, 60 miles away increases the miles away from the center of this city. So it kind of skewed the numbers a little bit. The reality of it is I was only off by about 30 miles on average with each one of my cities. And of course, Brownsville was hit by brushed by Hurricane Hannah. That was also in my top 5. Ocean City, Maryland, Tropical Storm Faye, Extratropical Storm Zeta. Miami, I did have in my top 20 last year. I do have it again this year. Tropical Storm Ada brushed. Grand Isle, Louisiana was number 8. Tropical Storm Cristobal and Major Hurricane Zeta. Galveston, Texas, believe it or not, they were impacted by Tropical Storm Beta and Delta brushed last year. ABC Islands did not get impacted. Morehead City, North Carolina, Hurricane Isaias. Norfolk, Virginia, backdoor Tropical Storm Isaias. Cabo Corrientes, the west coast of tip of Cuba, Tropical Storm Laura. Oviedo, Dominican Republic, which is on the south tip of the Vero Peninsula, Tropical Storm Laura. Barbados, I thought was going to get impacted last year, didn't. Dauphin Island, Alabama, Tropical Storm Cristobal, Hurricane Sally and Zeta. I was in Alabama last year for Sally. Kingston, Jamaica, I had a high risk, not in my top 5, but I did have in my top 20. They were not impacted last year. Jamaica's in really a big slump right now, and I really fear for Jamaica this hurricane season. I'll show you the graphics in a minute. Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, impacted by Hurricane Isaias. New York, Tropical Storm Faye and backdoor Tropical Storm Isaias. And Tampa, Florida, rounded out my top 20 last year. Tropical Storm Ada did impact Tampa last year. So I did very well last year. I mean, for people that don't think these predictions matter, look at that yellow on that graphic there. It matters. And I did have most of my areas impacted last year. So here's my top 20, starting from number 20. Oviedo, again, they were impacted last year. I expect them to get impacted again this year. Tampico, Mexico is kind of a wild card because Tampico is south of Texas. It's about several hundred miles south of Texas, right on the Gulf of Mexico there. Mathematically, they cracked the top 20. Martinique, which is in the Lesser Antilles, right in the middle of the island chain there. Mathematically, again, I'm not real high on these areas, but I think they're going to be impacted this year. And I also think it's going to be hurricane impacts or strong tropical storm this year, because I think hurricanes are going to form a little further east this year, maybe right near the Antilles. They're going to develop or rapidly intensify as they hit the warm waters of the Caribbean Sea. Dominica, remember what happened there a few years ago? They had Cat 5, Hurricane Maria come through there. Bimini, Bahamas, that's right off the coast of Southeast Florida, the Western Bahama Island chain. I have them at number 16. And the reason they cracked the top 20 is because I have a high risk for Southeast Florida this year, and they're right there. So anything that hits Southeast Florida usually hits Bimini. Beaufort, South Carolina. That's southern South Carolina. I think we're going to get something crossing in from the Gulf of Mexico across the southeast and impacting South Carolina this year. So it probably won't be a hurricane, but that's possible. All right, so we go 14 to 10. Savannah, Georgia. Again, Savannah, Georgia, I have at high risk, and I'm thinking tropical storm this year because of something crossing over from the Gulf of Mexico. Fort Lauderdale, Florida, it's a wild card. They were in my top 20 last year. It's one of those areas that's kind of a ticking time bomb, especially for a hurricane. But I'm a little bit, I don't know what to think about Fort Lauderdale. I'm thinking it's going to be maybe tropical storm Cat 1-ish kind of a situation, maybe a brush from a significant hurricane, but not a direct hit kind of a situation. Steinhatchee, Florida, batten down the hatches, man. I'm really worried about the Big Bend, Florida this year. That's my high-risk area, and that the reason it didn't crack the top 5 is because of mathematics. But I'm worried because there's a grouping of cities up in the Big Bend, Florida area, which is just north of Tampa. Eleuthera Island, Bahamas, I'm thinking the same thing, impacted from something affecting South Florida, coming up from the south maybe later in the season. Not real powerful, maybe powerful, but maybe probably tropical storm Cat 1. I know I'm all over the place on that. Eleuthera, I just don't know what to think about that. Cape Cod, Mass, but I don't have a big feeling for the Bahamas this year for some reason, but I think they're going to get maybe something coming through there, just not like a Dorian situation. Cape Cod, Massachusetts, another wild card that mathematically cracked the top 20, but Cape Cod sticks out there in eastern Massachusetts, and I think we could get something riding up the coast this year, kind of like Isaias last year. Maybe something that impacts Florida and then rides up the coast, and which could also impact these other cities I was telling you about. All right, that rounds off the. Now we get to the top 10. Number 9. Antigua, which is on the northeastern Caribbean Sea, on the northern Leeward Islands chain there. Antigua is south of St. Martin, and I'm thinking we're going to get something, maybe a hurricane coming into the northeastern Caribbean this year, but kind of maybe going north of Puerto Rico, heading towards maybe the Bahamas, and then kind of brushing the Bahamas and heading on out. We're going to have a lot of recurvatures this year as well, more than last year. So it could be a clip for the northeastern Caribbean Sea, and then maybe something turning on out. Vero Beach, Florida is another one of those odd picks this year because I don't feel real strong about it, but that could be attached to something riding up into South Florida from the south. Kingston, Jamaica, batten down the hatches this year. I'm just really worried about Jamaica. I think we're going to have a barn burner, massive major hurricane, maybe going through the Caribbean Sea this year, and Kingston's just ripe for something this year, and the whole island I'm just worried about. But mathematically, it's the only reason it didn't crack the top 5. Cedar Key, Florida, batten down the hatches again. That Big Bend, Florida area, Cedar Keys had some doozies come through there over the years, but they've been mainly Category 1, 2 hurricanes and tropical storms that come through there. Just concerned for Cedar Key, Florida this year. So here's the top 5, and I get into a little more explanation here. Homosassa, Florida is also in the Big Bend, Florida area, just north of Tampa. That area floods so easily. It's terrible. Like they're very low sea level. There's a nuclear power plant up in there in that whole area that could be wiped out by a major hurricane. Really concerned with the Big Bend. You know, in 2005, I talked about the Northern Gulf, and I was focused on Mississippi and Southeast Louisiana, and sure enough, Katrina came up there. I even said I thought there could be a high death toll that year, and you know, we all know what happened with Katrina. I think, and when I said that, by the way, I said New Orleans, you're right there to the left, and we all know what can happen with flooding. So I'm saying the same thing with Tampa this year, just off to the right. Very concerned with this area. Storm surge, big problems. If you live in that area, I'm just telling you, if you've done, and you know, another thing to consider about my predictions, even though I might say batten down the hatches and you're at high risk, you might not be hit that year. And then usually within a year or two later, bam, it happens. So I'm telling you, I'm giving you the hurricane warning flags right now for the Big Bend, Florida area, Tampa North. I'm telling you right now, I'm concerned. Now, Homosassa, Florida, was hit by Tropical Storm Eta last year. Did you know that 8 times in history since 1871, this area was hit the following year by either a hurricane or a tropical storm? That's the reason they cracked the top 5. And they're also clumped in with Cedar Key and Steinhatchee. That's why they cracked the top 5. Homosassa, number 5. Number 4, Negril, Jamaica. Remember I was just talking about Kingston a minute ago? Negril, Jamaica. Number 4, 8 years overdue for a named storm. That hardly ever happens back there. In fact, the longest gap ever in the history of Negril, Jamaica without getting a 40-mile-an-hour or greater tropical storm was 12 years gap. And right now they're at 8 years. So, and that was back, I think, in the 50s or something that they had that gap. The last time they were impacted was 2008 Tropical Storm Gustav. I'm really concerned with Jamaica this year. Jamaica is just like the Big Bend, Florida. My head's ready to explode with, oh my God, stuff. And I don't mean to scare the crap out of anybody. And I hate this because if I'm wrong, people are going to jump all over me, go, you had us all scared and rattled. And if I'm right, the professionals are still going to ignore it, even though they knew I was right, but they're not going to give me credit for it, right? So I win when I win, and I lose when I win, right? So, and I lose when I win, not just because I got the pick right, but because it probably killed people and was devastating for those communities. And I hate to say, but your time comes. It's a clock. Everybody's on the clock. It's, like when they have the draft for the NFL draft, the next team is on the clock. Well, that's what I'm saying for Jamaica and the Big Bend this year. You're on the clock. Belize, number 3, right? Now, Belize is one of those wild cards, right? I mean, it's one of those areas that gets all these majors in there. Like Belize is like major after major after major. They come through there. They're usually major. They do get Cat 1s and 2s as well, but it just seems like it's a magnet for majors. Belize has the highest number of named storms for hurricane hits. In other words, when hurricanes hit Belize, it usually happens when there's a high number of named storms during the hurricane season. 14.64 on average. Like when they have like 15 or more named storms on average, they get hit. So that's why they crack the top 5. 7 times since 1871, they've been impacted following a hit. They were hit by Hurricane Nana last year. It's one of those hurricanes that hit last year that nobody talks about, but it was one of those hurricane hits that happened. It was a Cat 1, but it did happen. And 8 times following something like that, they get hit again. 7 times rather. So, and it met 2 of the 8 criteria. It's very hard to crack my top 8 criteria, and it's got 2 of the 8. So only 2 other cities did that, and that's the reason Belize is number 3. I'm not real strong on Belize this year because I don't think we're going to get any deep Southwest Caribbean systems, but there's always something that can sneak in there, especially late in the season. So if you're in Belize, keep your eyes open to the east. Number 2, the Cayman Islands. I've been harping on this, for the last several years on the Caymans. As each year goes by, even though they've been impacted by named storms, I'm still expecting the big one to come in there and whack them. Cayman Islands has the highest average number of named storms, not just hurricanes, but all named storms, 18.40. Extremely active hurricane seasons tend to draw system named storms into the Cayman Islands. I'm predicting 20 to 24 named storms this year, so it fits right in with my thinking. 6 times since 1871, they've been impacted following a double impact year. So they were impacted by Laura and Ada last year. And that's quite amazing because it's hard enough to get hit by 2 storms in 1 year. But when it's happened, let's see, 6 times in history, that's pretty amazing that when they've been hit by double impact storms, they get hit the following year. So that really stands out to me. So, and again, the Caymans are overdue for a major and all that. So it adds all up. Caymans, Western Caribbean, high risk. I'm worried about the Caymans. And you know what happened there when Ivan hit back in 2004? People were climbing in their attics in the Cayman Islands, all over the Cayman Islands. People were climbing in their attics. Be ready for the waters. And my number 1 pick, believe it or not, I know this doesn't fit into my narrative with the Big Bend, Jamaica connection, but Wilmington's number 1. They were hit last year. People think that I just, pick whether it's due or overdue. It's not. There's a lot more that goes into it than that. But Wilmington is high risk because they were matched 11 of my chosen ENSO analog years. So if anybody's wondering what years I feel are similar to this year, it's 1956, 1971, 1974, 1984, 1985, 1989, 1995, 1996, 2001, 2006, 2008, 2011, 2012, 2018, and last year are all my analog years. And you might wonder, how do you come up with that, Jim? Well, I don't just pull it out of my ass. I go to the ENSO site, which I've linked to. It'll be in my blog that I'm going to release over the next day or so, and it'll give you all the details on how I come up with my findings. But the ENSO, it gives you all the years of ENSO and what the temperatures in the East Pacific were leading up to the kind of hurricane season that we're projecting for this hurricane season. And all these years match it, like the cooling of the East Pacific waters leading to a generally neutral to a maybe slightly La Nina kind of a hurricane season. All these years match it. And 11 of those 15 years, Wilmington got impacted. So that's something to think about. Also has the highest number of years hit during a positive NAO, which I think the majority of this hurricane season is going to have a positive NAO, which means maybe a little bit of stronger ridging causing systems to come further west before they turn north. So I think what's going to happen this year, we're going to have a lot of systems curving off the coast, the east coast of the United States. And that would impact the Bahamas potentially and the northeastern Caribbean Sea and maybe brush some of these areas like Wilmington. But I don't know. Number one, I usually think it's going to be a hurricane. And it's met 3 of the 8 criteria, higher than any other city of all the cities I calculated this year. So Wilmington is number 1 based on mathematics. I don't have a real strong feeling about Wilmington, but something tells me there's just something going to come through there. It could be the backdoor system that comes through the Gulf, crossing over. It could be a recurvature off the coast. It could be something coming directly in like Isaias. You can always get a major up that way too. The waters are warm enough for it. So, the waters, it's a little less of a chance when you get north of the Outer Banks. The chances drop for majors. But when you hit that Gulf Stream, you got a lot of fuel there. So anything's possible. So this is the important thing. Where do I think they're going to go is based on tracks, right? So here was 2016, and I'm really good at this, even though I don't like drawing maps like this because you have egg on your face if it doesn't pan out. But I've been pretty good at it. Here was 2016's map I drew. The white lines are the potential tracks, right? And then Matthew hit. So Matthew came up. Look at my white track down here. I thought it was going to be Jamaica, then coming up through central Cuba and right up the coast of Florida. It got close. I mean, look at the red track. That was actually Matthew's track. So it wasn't really that far off. The thinking was in line. And notice it impacted the Carolinas up here, which I also had it, at moderate or high risk. And it impacted those areas as well. Caused a lot of problems up there, Matthew did, by the way. So, and then we had some other systems impact some of my cities. But this is the major one I wanted to show, the Matthew track. And how I was right on the general thinking of that. So then 2017, I nailed these tracks. I mean, I nailed Irma. Harvey was the early one, right? And I even said early on the map. Look at that. I said early and Harvey happened. And it was a category 4. Came right in there, almost in the same exact place I drew the arrow. And my potential tracks were in white, and the red is what ended up happening. So I nailed the Harvey track. What am I trying to say? Yeah, Harvey, Nate impacted the northern Gulf, and it was kind of close. My white track there, and then of course the red track was Irma. And look at what I had before the season started. I said a little later in the season, Irma was kind of mid, September deal, but that's, in the later half of the hurricane season, by the way. Look at that. I mean, you couldn't, I mean, other than me thinking that it was going to ride up the coast, you really couldn't do much better for thinking of track and then having it actually pan out. All right. And then here's the swaths of the wind matching my cities. I mean, everywhere I have my cities listed, bam, they were impacted. Amazing. Then here were my 2018 predictions, right? So I had my red tracks. I'm sorry, the white tracks were mine, and the red tracks are what ended up happening. So I predicted early we could see a system in the Eastern Gulf. If you bend it backwards, and it made it late in the season, that was Michael. Hurricane Michael came in there as a Category 5, right about the same place I thought we'd get something coming in. And then I predicted late in the season we'd have something come up from the south. That did not pan out. But look at the mid-season. I predicted a system coming up northeast of the Bahamas and then impacting the mid-Atlantic. Well, Florence did that, except it was a little further north, and it hit my in top 5. I had Wilmington, North Carolina, just like I do this year, and Florence came right over Wilmington. So, I mean, you really can't do much better than that. 19, I didn't make any predictions. I had kind of a hiatus that year. I was just kind of going through a meltdown. I'm bipolar with this project, by the way. 2020, here were my predictions. I predicted last year we'd have something come into the southern Texas area. Hannah developed and kind of followed this kind of a track, becoming a hurricane in the Gulf and then coming into South Texas. So I was a little off on that. And then we had Sally come up on this kind of a track, but it happened. Actually, Sally came in from the Caribbean, moved north, and then kind of hesitated off the coast and then moved northeast. So if you follow the track inland, right where it says number 16, it basically followed that exact track, Sally. It went over southeastern Alabama, the Panhandle, and then through Georgia and right up off the east. So I kind of had the Sally track right, but I just had it, a little bit to the left of where it actually happened. I mean, it can't be perfect. So what do I expect this year? Here it is. And the grand unveiling of this year's map is bingo. There it is. These are my 2 main tracks of concern. So put this in your memory. Caribbean coming north. Both of these systems. I think late in the year we could have something. I don't like to talk about seasons because I put out egg on my face when I do that, but something coming up and, flirting with South Florida here or coming over South Florida. May or may not be a hurricane. Not real high on that, not real strong on that thinking. But look at the Jamaica factors in both of these potential tracks. But this is the one I'm worried about. Something coming through the Caribbean and then coming up over the Cayman Islands, Jamaica, potentially a major, Western Cuba, and then here it comes. The drama unfolds. We've got a blockbuster heading up into the Big Bend, Florida area and crossing over into the Atlantic. Big system like a Donna type of a thing, some breaking, massive. But then again, that's just my opinion. It still counts if it's a tropical storm. Just saying. 40 miles an hour or greater is my criteria. Just because I say I think it's going to be a major hurricane or a big hurricane doesn't mean that it has to be a hurricane for it to count. It still counts if it's 40 miles an hour. So could we have maybe a plethora of tropical storms up in here? That's a possibility. There are other tracks on this potential. Again, I want to emphasize just because I don't have the Western Gulf in my top 20 doesn't mean you're not going to be. Again, every year there are areas impacted I don't have in my top 20. It's just the way it is. The Northeast, I don't have a big feeling for the Northeast this year, but they're a wild card. The Northeast, you get all the systems coming up the East Coast. You can get something from the Southeast, although it's not the most popular track for the Northeast being impacted. Usually they're coming in from the South-Southeast or the South or the South-Southwest, coming over land. But I just don't have a big feel for these areas. Again, that just doesn't mean that they're not going to get hit. I don't have a track for Belize, but it's in my top 5. The Bahamas, I just don't have a big feel for the Bahamas, but they could be hit. They're a wild card every year. Bermuda, I just don't have in my feeling for this year for Bermuda. They can get a lot of recurvatures. I expect a lot of recurvatures out of here. So they could be in play, as well as the Canadian Maritimes. All right, so it's about the end of my show here. It's 9:25. Let me check any comments. I don't know if anybody's recently commented. Yeah, we got a bunch more comments in here. So let's see. We got a message here from Josh. I believe Periscope is gone. I heard Twitter bought it out and then shut it down. But there's still people streaming. This is live on Twitter. So if anybody on Periscope, rather, if this is on Periscope, I know Josh is on Periscope, or somebody's on Periscope. Marlon is on Periscope. Would love to hear from people on Periscope tonight. Here's another message. Jim, just want to say thanks for all your work. Hurricane City is the first place I go to find info on storms heading up to Halifax. Appreciate that. We got a lot of fans up in Halifax and up in the Canadian Maritimes. I really do appreciate that. The people up there. And they, again, the Canadian Maritimes, what was it? Hurricane Halifax got pounded by Hurricane Jose a few years back. And I did have Halifax in my top 5 that year, I think, or in my top 20, and they got walloped by that. It was a Cat 2, caused like 5-6 feet of surge in there. It was a mess, caused a lot of damage. Was proud that I had that in my top 20 that year that it hit. Let's see, what else do we have here? Let's see. Stormfront Freaks listening in. Maybe thanks for sharing. Oh, that was me sharing there that they're going to be live. I think they're live tonight as well. Let's see. I think you will be wrong this year, Jim. This is from Unknown Woman 291. I think I know that might be. We'll see. You know what? I hope I'm wrong for the sake of the people in the impact areas. I really do. Let's see. Wait a minute. What's going on here? Oh. It's interesting. Top 10, of course, we always hope we don't get landfalls, but hope they're minimal from Stormfront Freaks. Where are you guys located? I can't remember where Stormfront Freaks is located. If you happen to still be listening, let me know where you're located. I can't remember where you guys are. I know you're all spread out, but let's see. Panama City. Let's see. I got more messages coming in here. Let's see. This thing's got this annoying window in the way. Hi from Danilo Evangelista. Where are you from? I'm interested where Danilo is from. We got a message here from Sean, Juan, and then Dorian. Yeah, they did get impacted by Dorian up in the Canadian Maritimes as well. Jonathan, what about Puerto Rico? Listening tonight from Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, it's a hard one. Puerto Rico kind of reminds me of the northeastern United States. They're always in play because the systems coming from Africa always have to head that way. And I really, it's a matter of just a few degrees, whether Puerto Rico gets slammed or not. I mean, my God, Maria and Irma, they got slammed in 2017. And I did have them in my top 20 in 2017. I just don't have a real strong feeling about Puerto Rico this year. Tropical Storm Cat 1 maybe bouncing off the area or something. I just don't think a barn burner is going to come in there this year. I think you're going to see a lot of recurvatures in the northeastern Caribbean Sea. So you got to watch those. You might get clipped by one of those. And it could be something strong because I think we're going to see explosive development in the Eastern Caribbean Sea this year, and that could include Puerto Rico. So I'd watch it in Puerto Rico. I really would. More messages. Florida. Let's see. This is from Dillo. Again, Florida looks like it might really be hit hard, but I think the Gulf too. New York? Well, possibly. Oh, he's in New York. Okay, gotcha. Let's see. We got here. Fred, this is Fred up in Long Island. Well, a strong storm this hope Fred will be a strong storm this year. That's right. You're on the list, Fred. Forgot about that. Hit Long Island. Wouldn't that be awesome? I mean, how many of you out there have had a hurricane named after you and then hit your city? I wonder if there's anybody out there that's had that happen. I mean, I'm sure there is. Maybe they're not listening tonight, but have you lived in a city and your name and you get walloped? That would be, on one hand, it would be awesome. And on the other hand, it would be like, oh, now you got to hide your face. Like, oh, shit. Like if you're named Katrina and you live in New Orleans and your name is Katrina, like everywhere you go, there's people like, oh, Hurricane Katrina, man, get out of here, beat it. There people, I guarantee if your name is, you get walloped by your name, you're never going to hear the end of it. It's for Fred. The reason I'm saying that for Fred is because he's like me. He's a hurricane enthusiast, and he's got hurricanes, blizzards, nor'easters.com. Great website. I linked to it. It's in the drop-down menus at Hurricane City. He has all the newspaper articles from all the hurricanes in history that hit land in the United States and all over the place. I mean, it's an awesome website. He's got all the newspaper articles. Check that out. Hurricanes, blizzards, nor'easters.com. The links are at Hurricane City. But Fred, if you get a hurricane up there, I know Fred will be out there covering it. He'll be streaming live, and you'll never hear the end of it, though. You better hope it's a doozy, or you'll just never hear the end of that. Let's see, what else do we got here? Paul Armani listening tonight. Paul watching from Denver. Great show as always. You won't get any hurricanes in Denver. That I can guarantee. Denver will not be hit by a hurricane this year. Although you'll be hit by Hurricane Colorado State predictions. That's the only hurricane you'll be hit by. Let's see. This is a message. Alan Snyder, Weather Central. I will never have a hurricane named after Alan. Saw that my name is Alan from Port St. Lucie. Okay, Port St. Lucie. Well, Port St. You're near Vero, which is in my my number 8 this year, I think. We'll never have a hurricane named after Alan. Well, Alan's retired, of course. That was the big one that hit Jamaica. Gilbert hit Jamaica. Alan went just south there. Alan walloped the Caymans. It really took a toll on the Yucatan. And then it was a Cat 5, like one of those benchmark Cat 5s. Big storm, too. Gilbert was huge. And then it went in the Gulf and hit just south of Brownsville as like a 110-mile-an-hour hurricane. But Gilbert and Alan hit that same place, just south of Brownsville. But Alan's retired. So, yeah, that's not going to be used again. Alan with one L may be on the list. Probably not. I guess they won't use the other form of Alan. Let's see. Yeah, Alan. I just clicked on that. Wait a minute. Hide. Let's see. Yeah, that was the last message. All right, so folks, I'm going to wrap it up tonight. One more image I want to show you, though, is let's see. That is my new truck. All right, so thanks in part to the donations at Hurricane City. We really appreciate it. But, I use this truck for business as well. My business paid for this truck. But the truck to the left is the Ford F-250. That was in hurricanes, let's see, Matthew, Sally, Delta, Irma, Ada. Went through 5 or 6 systems. The eye of quite a few of them. So great truck, F-250. Was in Hurricane Michael, the eye of Hurricane Michael in 2018. See the light on top? There was a light bar that ran across there and it completely got ripped off the truck. The running lights got destroyed. The side mirror got folded in on the passenger side. The paint on the back of the truck blew off the truck. And so the light bar I found out in front of the truck, it blew off on the backside of Hurricane Michael. The backside of Michael was a beast. The eye came right over me. I was in the eye. I measured 924 millibars. And then the backside hit it. I was under that deep red convection, and that truck took a beating. I have Lexan glass that protects the back of that window. What I do is back into the wind. You can find that video on my YouTube channel. Just go to hurricanecity.com, spelled out, all one word, hurricanecity.com. And that Hurricane Michael is there. You can also find it in the drop-down menus at the top of Hurricane City under Video Archives. There's 3 different versions of this video. There's a short version that's only like 9 minutes long. There's a middle version that's like 20 minutes long. And then I have the full documentary, which is a little over an hour, showing before, during, and after. But that truck took a beating. The glass broke, and it saved my life. But that's why I had the Lexan glass on the truck, to save my life, and it worked. So here's the new truck to the right, the Dodge Ram 2021 3500 series. It's got the Lexan glass protection on the back of the truck. It has all the LEDs. There's a yellow light on it now that I don't have in this picture. There's going to be a grill guard on the front of it, the winch. It's got a roll cover for the back, so I can use it for additional storage. And of course, I bring a chainsaw. I bring everything to help people, in the aftermath of hurricanes. Oh, and another thing I wanted to talk about. Let me go back on camera here. This is so important, and that is, please get a generator. A real quick story, and I know I got to wrap things up here, but I was in Hurricane Sally last year in Gulf Shores, Alabama. The eye came right over me. Bill's aunt lives in Fairhope and areas inland about 10, 15 miles off the coast. And they were petrified during that hurricane. Of course, Sally was a slow-moving hurricane. It was a Category 2, 105, but a slow-moving Category 2 in a lot of ways can be as bad as a fast-moving Category 3 because the wind is constantly pushing on objects and breaking things. So if you're in a slow-moving hurricane, it can be a traumatic experience, not to mention the fact that it was all in the dark. It was an all-night event. It started when the sun went down, and it went all through the night. 10 hours of hurricane-force winds just belting that area. So she said, I'm getting out the next hurricane, because they didn't have a generator. So in the aftermath, they had no power. They were sweating. It's an elderly couple. They were just devastated by they didn't have a lot of damage to the house, but there were trees down everywhere. They had some shingle damage, whatever. But they don't want to be there again. And let this be a lesson. If you're in the hurricane zone, anywhere in the hurricane zone, get a generator. Even if it's a portable, it's great to have a standby generator because it comes on automatically. You don't have to crank it up. You don't have to worry about the fumes getting in your house. But please get a standby generator or a portable generator. If you have a portable generator, leave it outside your house, away from the windows, and run extension cords into your house. Now, the way I have mine wired out here, I have it over here. It's a generator that doesn't run the central AC, but it will run. You can buy one of those small portable air conditionings, right? And you can run an extension cord, and you can be comfortable in the aftermath of a hurricane. Now, if you're in a condo, you're out of luck unless they have a standby generator. But if you're in a house or apartment, you can maybe set up a generator outside and run an extension cord into your house and at least get a little portable air conditioner and run and be comfortable in the aftermath of a hurricane. You can sleep in your own bed. You can use it to make coffee in the morning with your coffee maker. You can run a fan. You can run the TV set. You can run radio. You can run your lights and everything. Oh, and one more thing. This is probably the best investment you will ever make. The headlights, let me take the headphones off. This is the best investment you will ever make. Of course, the battery's got to be dead on it, right? Just, wait a minute. Yeah, it's on. It's just that you can't see it on the screen. But yeah, so I use this in every hurricane. I bring it with me in the truck. This light, you can walk around hands-free, right? You can go to the kitchen, go to the bathroom. You can do all the things. With this headlight flashlight, who wants to carry around a flashlight? Like, honey, where did I leave the flashlight? Oh, it's in the other room, but it's dark. I can't see. You're feeling around, and this is the best investment you could buy is a head flashlight and a generator. Those are the two. And, buy a tarp too, because If your roof gets damaged, you can go up there and quickly cover it. When the winds die down, you can, use some cement blocks or something or whatever to hold it down and keep the rain, because some hurricanes clear out, right? There's no rain after it. And then other hurricanes continue dumping rain on you. They just don't get out of the area. So, and sometimes you can be left in a trough environment and you could have rain for days. And even if you don't have rain for days, eventually the rain's going to catch up to you because it's hurricane season and your rain's going to come through your roof. So you better have a tarp to cover your roof. So those are the three main things: generator, head flashlight, and a tarp. And of course, non-perishable foods, water, bottled water. You don't have to run and get bottled water at the store. Just keep a bunch of empty containers and clean them out, a little bit before the hurricane comes. Fill them up with water. Keep your empty containers and just use those over again. You don't need to go buy a bunch of bottled water and then throw your empty bottles in the garbage, which end up in Biscayne Bay and all over the landfills. Just use the same bottles over again for every hurricane season. I keep a bunch of containers. There's actually one that's shaped like an accordion, like you can open it up and it becomes like a 5-gallon container and it flattens out like a pancake when you're done with it. There's all kinds of neat things. You can fill your bathtub up with water. Just don't go buy a bunch of water. It's the stupidest. Just get your empty containers and fill them up with water. Anyway, I'm not big into the preparedness stuff, but I'm just saying those are the 4 things that I always like to have as a hurricane is approaching. And again, if you don't have shutters, try to buy some accordions. Even if you have to finance it, it's so easy. Close and lock. You're done. You don't have to kill yourself. Where are the screws? I lost all the nuts and bolts. You're scraping your hand. You're cutting your fingers. By the way, have a first aid kit as well. Bandages. Somebody's going to get cut. More people get hurt in the aftermath of hurricanes than during hurricanes. So have all these things on. Be ready to get hurt afterwards. You might have to move a tree branch out of your yard. You might have to unblock your front door or your back door. You might have to handle broken glass. All those things. Have a first aid kit. And I'm sitting here talking without a microphone. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to wrap it up here. It's getting a little late. I got to go to work tomorrow like everybody else. I appreciate the donations. I can't tell you enough. The people that donate to Hurricane City, it's really helps a lot. I mean, we got some ideas this year, and I can't talk about it because the products haven't arrived. And if we don't have the products, we can't say we're going to do it. But I got some really cool ideas. Again, visit hurricanecity.com. I've got a lot of new stuff on there to check out. And again, during the hurricane season, we'll be live, by the way. How big of a Florida year do you expect? Again, Danielle, Daniel, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, but I do expect a big year for Florida, especially the Panhandle, not the Panhandle, the Big Bend, Florida area. And of course, the Panhandle is always in play. If it hits the Big Bend, a little deviation to the left, and that puts the Panhandle at risk. I know they were impacted hard by Sally last year, but my God, I mean, the Panhandle is always in play. But I'm expecting the Big Bend, Florida area to get walloped. Southeast Florida, I'm a little not sure about hurricane versus tropical storm, but I think we're going to get something. But I'm just worried about the Big Bend this year. I'm watching it'll be the opposite, right? Southeast Florida will get nailed, and Big Bend will get a tropical storm. But either way, I'm expecting something in both of those areas. There was something else I was going to mention. What was it? Notes. Oh yeah, Chris Hollis in Tampa. One more time. Want to thank Chris for his hard work. The guy does tremendous work behind the scenes. Again, the recon programs, the Google Earth recon, the best performing models. Again, at Hurricane City, when there's an active storm, I built the GIS maps at Hurricane City. When there is an active storm, go to the front page of hurricanecity.com. The best performing models will be displayed on the map. This is out of hundreds of models. The 5 best models over the past 24-hour track will be on those maps. You can click on the maps. You can see what model it is. You can see weather observations on those maps. You can choose recon. It'll be on those maps. Everything is on those GIS maps. I'm really proud of the work I put into that. And also you can get the weather observations by going to the database pages, and at the top of each database page, there's a zoomed in GIS map with live streaming cameras and observations, live observations as hurricanes are hitting. And we're going to lean on those when we do hurricane coverage this year. Anyway, that's it. Thank you again for the donations. I got to call it a night tonight. This will be archived everywhere, and I'll have my blog released. I'll have my tropical update, my prediction video released, which, by the way, a couple of years ago, I had like 30,000 views on that. And the year before that, I had like 20,000 views. Last year, I didn't get a lot of traction on that video for some reason, but that video will be on my YouTube channel explaining my predictions one more time with maps. There'll be a GIS map on the front page saying Jim's predictions. You can click on that. It'll give you all the details on how I came up with my top 20. So without further ado, we'll see you. Again, you can follow me on Twitter at Hurricane City. And please tune in whenever hurricanes hit. We will be live covering all the hurricanes this year, if possible. I might not be in all of them, and I don't go down to the Caribbean. We cover those in-house. So we'll have to rely on people giving us information via email. My email, jim@hurricanecity.com, with any comments or questions. And again, please spread the word about Hurricane City. Thank you all, and we'll be here as hurricanes hit this season. Thank you for watching, everybody.